I'll go over a few key points with you guys. So Washington kind of like, your exit ticket the other day was about how Washington like really warned against he warned against exit tickets, yeah. He warned against political parties. Why did he not want political parties to form? What did he want to happen instead? Did he want the nation to be like divided by political parties?
No.
No, he did not. So he wanted the government to like work cohesively. He wanted government officials to like work together to get things accomplished. And so he also warns against like regional groups. So he didn't want like the North and the South being kind of like separated. He didn't want them to like, go against each other. He wanted them to work cohesively and together and like depend on one another. And in a way they do, but that is something that like obviously the Civil War happened. So we do see tensions start to rise over time between North and South. And also he talks about like the Atlantic and the Pacific. So like just across the country, not being like regionally separated either, but like being unified as one nation. So here he says control goes back and forth between one party to the next, each seeking revenge on the previous. And so he kind of notes that, the way political parties worked for the most part were that it goes back and forth between the two parties. And the whole time that the one is in power, it's trying to like undo or seek revenge on everything the one before it did. And so it's a constant battle of back and forth. And it's not really like, in his mind, it's not really progressing forward. It's more like trying to do what the other didn't or couldn't, or, So that's that one. So those were like the main key points, and that's like what your exit ticket the other day was. It asks you like specifically about excerpt number 18. And so like he says that beyond just like regional parties, like political parties in general are cunning engines. They focus on their own short-term agendas. So they're not focusing on like the betterment of the whole group in his mind. They're just focusing on like what they want to accomplish in the immediate future, is what he's saying pretty much. That's what a short-term agenda is. And that once the power is achieved, they'll burn the bridges behind them and destroy the very engines which gave them their unjust power. And so he's just saying like, once they're in power, they pretty much are doing whatever they want to do. They're not taking into consideration other people's opinions and things like that in his mind. So nobody has any other questions about the excerpts? Okay. I will skip back to like the PowerPoint that we've used off and on about government things. So we're going to talk about like the 1796 election. So this was 1792 when Washington won. What was very unique about how Washington won the presidency? What is he the only president and the only like candidate to have ever done? What color do we see here? How many colors do we see? Gray is not a color in this case.
Oh, one.
One. So what's that mean? These are the electoral votes, right? If they're all the same color, there we go. He won every electoral vote in the 1792 election. In 1796, that's not the case, right? We've already looked at this map before during class. So this is 1792 here on the left. This is 1796 on the right. Obviously, there are some key like geographical differences too. Georgia is smaller in this map, and we add Tennessee as a state. These areas here are becoming territories. And so over the next few elections, these states will be added as states. So that'll change elections too. But in the 1796 election, and I think there's actually another map. I might go to this one. You have John Adams running as a Federalist and Thomas Jefferson, running as the Democratic Republican candidate. And so you have two candidates, and they really split the vote, right? So the electoral vote comes out 68 to 71, 68 electoral votes in favor of Jefferson and 71 electoral votes in favor of Adams. So who does that mean wins? Who becomes the second president of the United States? '68 to 71, who becomes the second president of the United States?
John Adams.
John Adams. So John Adams wins the electoral vote, becomes the second president. How do they decide who becomes the vice president at this time? Abby, how do they decide who becomes the vice president at this time? We talked about this in class.
I have no idea, Miss Morris.
Okay. Owen, how do they decide who becomes vice president? Does John Adams get to pick his vice president? Owen, are you there?
Giving you a heads up, don't ask me because I won't know.
Okay. I'm guessing Owen is not listening to us right now. Ellie, how do they decide who becomes vice president? Does John Adams pick his vice president?
No.
No. Who becomes vice president?
George Washington.
No.
I don't know, the guy that's
Whoever
green.
gets second place, right? So whoever gets second place.
Well,
So
I said the guy that's
Thomas
green
Jefferson.
after that.
it's Thomas Jefferson.
I said it! Oh my god, I said it!
Girl.
Okay.
Oh god.
Okay. So Thomas Jefferson becomes vice president. Do you think that having the two highest officials in the government, do you think having them from different political parties is going to be an effective way of running the country?
No.
No. Do you think tension is going to be super high in that White House with John Adams and Thomas Jefferson?
Yes.
Absolutely. It is going to be like super crazy. They don't get along. Like they don't get along. And it's going to make their time in office very difficult for both of them. So then you have Jefferson will take over after John Adams, and that is the first switch of what's the word I'm looking for? Like political parties. That's the first time like there's a transition of power between the political parties. George Washington really didn't have a political party, so the switch from Washington to Adams isn't really a switch between political parties because it was the first time it ever happened, and so this is the first time you get the switch between the two. Jefferson in general really doesn't get along with the Federalists. What other Federalists did he not get along with during Washington's presidency? We talked about this guy so much. There's a whole musical about this person.
What was the question? Oh, Hamilton.
Hamilton. Jefferson didn't really get along with Hamilton either, right? So he doesn't really get along with a lot of the Federalists, unfortunately. And so it's definitely going to create some issues for them moving forward. So in the election of 1796, Washington doesn't seek a third term. Why does he not seek a third term again? Why did he believe he shouldn't run for a third term?
So it wouldn't become like a king rule.
Yeah, he didn't want it to be similar to being like a king. They had just, escaped a tyrannical king, and he just didn't want to get back into that. And so he felt that 2 terms was a sufficient amount of time for a president to accomplish what he needed to accomplish. The Federalist candidate is John Adams, the Republican candidate is Thomas Jefferson, and the candidate receiving the most votes would be president, and second place would be vice president. And I told the last class, I was like, just think of it this way. In 2016, when Trump won, do you think that if Hillary Clinton had to be his vice president, they would have gotten along well in that White House for the past 4 years?
No.
No, probably not. So just think of it that way. And so basically the political parties, they change over time. Obviously we don't have a Federalist and a Democratic Republican Party now. So they change over time. They kind of evolve into what is relevant with the country at the time. But this is the beginning of the American political parties, and they pretty much form around these central characters: John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, the usual crowd we're talking about for the past few weeks. On your Canvas page today, let me see if I can get that pulled up and show you that. On your Canvas page today, there's a link to vocab, and we combined the Washington and Adams vocab. So instead of just looking at Washington vocab now, it says number 2, we will introduce Adams vocabulary. It's Adams and Washington put together. So it's a Quizlet link, words, and it is Adams and Washington. So because some of the vocab words for Adams are the same as Washington, so we just figured we put it all together. It just makes more sense that way anyways. And I'll probably do a little vocab quiz next week over these. So just keep that in mind, that you're probably going to want to be looking through these, because there'll probably be a vocab quiz next week. Ellie, do you have your hand up right now?
Yeah.
Do you
We
need
should do. Yeah.
Huh?
We should do a Quizlet live, and you should
Quizlet
share
live?
your screen. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that in just a few minutes. I want you to go ahead and do your exit ticket first. So do the exit ticket right now, because it asks about Jefferson and Adams. So do the exit ticket first. I'll give you 5 or 6 minutes to work through that, and then we can do a Quizlet live, okay? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop recording right now, because that's all the information that